And I'm Ron Burgundy. Go yourself, San Diego.
So why do we cuss?
I found in my research that swearing can be beneficial at times. It can help us to deal with pain. It can help us summon up strength when we need it. Perhaps it can make us more courageous. We swear to, sometimes it's funny to swear, right? Just saying fuck is funny. People swear because it sounds cool. It can be a bonding experience. It can be a sort of, I know you well enough that I know I can swear to you and you'll swear back to me because we're mates. And, it's a good way to insult people. Some people, there's a quote, what was it like? He who first cussed his fellow man rather than smash his head in with a brick laid the foundation of civilization, right? It's a way of violence without actual violence. There's so many reasons why we swear.
If it's such a pervasive thing throughout society, why is it still a taboo thing to do?
Its whole nature is that it's taboo. And, whenever you swear, you always have to be careful, don't you? Have I judged this situation? Like when I swore a moment ago to you, part of me was weighing up the odds. Is this going to work? You're never sure how a swear word's going to land. And that's perhaps what helps it retain its power.
How do our brains and our bodies kind of treat swear words? Are they just another word to our brains and bodies, or do we have more of a physiological reaction when we use them?
There is plenty of research, including some from my lab, showing the physiological response to swearing. It's like the stress response, like the fight-flight response. You see an increase in heart rate, you see a change in skin conductance, which is indicative of an emotional, swearing is emotional language, and so that emotion lands, and we experience emotion quite often when we say or hear a swear word, and that's kind of what's picked up. There's some interesting research sort of linking swearing with different parts of the brain and the bits than where language is normally processed. So most languages process left cortex, which is this left side, the surface of the brain here and here. But there is evidence of people with damage to these areas that have problems with normal language who retain the ability to swear. It's like it's somewhere else. There's some research showing that stereotypical language is handled in different areas. So swearing seems to be handled differently by the brain.
Why would it be in a different part of the brain? Like, why would our brain decide that this needs to be somewhere else? What would be the reason?
That's a really good question, actually. It must be this emotional aspect of swearing. It must be those pulling it across to those emotional centers.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but you found that swearing is linked to strength increases in pain management. How does this work?
We started off looking at swearing and pain because from the everyday observation that quite often the first thing people do when they hurt themselves is say a swear word. It's okay, that's interesting. Why do they do that? And so we just ran very simple experiments where we used ice cold water, right? Which is put your hand in ice cold water. It's painful but not harmful. So ethically, we can research with that tool. People will keep their hands in the water longer repeating a swear word compared with repeating a neutral word. Okay, that's the finding. And then to explain that, there's a couple of explanations in the running for this. The first one is linked to that emotionality, and it's the idea that by swearing we deliberately stress ourselves out a little bit more, and we benefit from a natural form of pain relief that's linked with stress called stress-induced analgesia. But recently we've also been looking at more psychological explanations, and this is linked to disinhibition. So when we swear, when we're disinhibited, we swear. That's kind of one fairly obvious thing. But also, when we swear, we become a little bit more disinhibited. And so, by swearing, we deliberately kind of prime a disinhibited state, and then we benefit from that because we don't hold back, or we push ourselves a little bit more, and so we'll put up with pain for longer.
That disinhibition, why would we get stronger?
It's the same mechanisms, right? Well, so we initially moved on from pain to strength because if swearing makes you, it has adrenaline and that sort of things, which was part of this stress-induced analgesia model, then it should make you stronger. It's the adrenaline should help you. Anyway, we ran several experiments looking at that, and while swearing does make you stronger, We used a hand gripper. You grip this little device, and the more you grip it, the more a little needle goes round. So we get like a sort of an objective measure of strength. And we had people on a kind of a static exercise bike, sort of measures how much power they're putting through the pedals. Anyway, both those tasks, people produce more power when they're repeating a swear word compared with a neutral word. That's the finding. But we didn't show any evidence of the psychophysiology linked to, what we saw with swearing and pain, linked to this emotional sort of stress reaction. So that was a puzzle, actually. We found the effect, but not for the expected reason. So that's led to some more theorizing. Well, what else could be going on? And psychologically speaking, this is where disinhibition started to come in. There's a bunch of there's studies from like the 1950s or perhaps even earlier showing various things like making a loud noise. People will do a strength task more effectively. More recently, hitting a tennis ball and measuring the speed. People will hit it harder if they grunt. Linking these sort of outbursts to more strength. And these studies suggest disinhibition as a mechanism. So that's what we've been running with the last few years, trying to evidence this. And the idea is swearing makes you a bit more disinhibited. When you're disinhibited, you don't hold back. You go for it a little bit more, push yourself a bit harder, put up with the pain a little bit longer, grip that thing a little bit tighter.
When you look at the strength benefits, like how much of a strength benefit are we talking about? Say somebody could bench 200 pounds, they can bench 250 or they can bench 202. It's
a single digit percent. It may be somewhere between 5 and 8%, I think, is the difference. But
so that's like 5 to 10 pounds, depending on how much you're doing. That could be a significant amount of. I think in sports terms, that's quite a decent uplift, isn't it? Yeah. Does it seem to matter the strength of the swear word itself? Like, does the F word get you more than saying the B word or the S word?
Yeah. So this is kind of where we are at the moment, actually, with the research. It's the last few years have opened up an avenue of research. I mean, I'll tell you the story. We got some sponsorship from Nurofen, and they wanted to run some research with us. Just for sort of fun, really. And they said, what do we make up swear words, right? If we make up swear words, will they have the same effect? I thought, well, probably not, but let's see. So they had a PR company make up a load of swear words, and we did this sort of exercise trying to choose between them. And then we ended up with fouch and twizpipe, okay? Fouch, because it had a sort of slightly emotional resonance, linking back to that emotional mechanism, and twizpipe, just because it's funny, maybe distracting. Anyway, made up swear words, as you might have expected, had no effect in a pain study compared with fuck. Presumably, the more taboo the word, the stronger the effect should be. That's the hypothesis.
So we talked about, the person who is swearing is disinhibited. What happens to the person who hears it? Is there an equal psychological effect for the person who hears it? Do they become inhibited?
On the whole, I think it's a lesser effect if you hear it incidentally, unless it's obviously directed at you, and then, yeah, that would be very nice.
Are you ready for some harder / listener submitted questions?
Oh, go on then.
Is there a type of person who seems to cuss more? Like, is there a certain demographics or physiological, psychological makeups that make somebody cuss more than somebody else?
One really interesting thing that might surprise you is a guy called Tony McHenry is a linguist based at Lancaster University, and he put out this study in the early noughties where they looked at the British National Corpus, which is a library of examples of use of English spoken, written in the media, in all different kinds of contexts. And they searched that corpus for the appearance of the word fuck, and then they analysed, amongst other things, who was speaking it. And as you might expect, as you go up the sort of socio-economic hierarchy, the incidence of the word fuck diminishes from like working class to like lower middle class to upper middle class. But when you get to kind of upper class, the prevalence rises again. So it's almost like People climbing the greasy pole, trying to make an impression in the class system, watch their swearing, but once you've made it and there are no repercussions, well, hey, here we go again. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, you mind your behavior until you don't have to anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
If you were going to use this strategically, how would you do it? Do you just say it once? Do you have to say it multiple times? Like, how does this kind of work?
That's a good question. So in our research, we do, in the strength stuff, we have people repeat the word for 10 seconds before, let's say, doing the grip task, or repeating the word for, I think it was a minute during the part of the cycling task where we measured power. Because it's going to wear off after a while, isn't it? And this is research that so much hasn't been done, but understanding the timelines of these things is we don't have a good understanding of that. How long, if you swear for 10 seconds, how long can you expect that to last for before it's worn off and you need to do it again? These are questions we don't really have answers to at the moment, but these are the things we've done that's successful are either swearing while you're doing a task for up to about 2 to 3 minutes, or swearing in preparation for a task for between 10 and 20 seconds.
Is there any truth to the idea that people who cuss more are more honest?
There is research on that, not in my lab, but there is research on that. There's the idea. Let me see. What was the research was analysing what people have put on Facebook and kind of running it through a language analysis for likely honesty of what was being said. Don't ask me how they do that. And then they looked at the frequency of swearing and found that the more swearing, the more honest the honesty tool found the work to be. And the theory there is that when someone swears, they're in unfiltered mode. Yeah, you're seeing the real, authentic person.
What are you currently working on now? Like, what's kind of the future of this research?
Yeah, so a couple of interesting things. Like I was saying about during the earlier part about this idea of is the tabooness of the word linked to its strength and power? And in research, there's the idea of a dose response effect. If you get a bigger dose, do you see a bigger response? So it's very much that sort of idea. We've ran a couple of studies this year. So an interesting thing, well, I think is interesting. You see, I think swearing is actually a double taboo, because if you take the word fuck, the meaning of the word is taboo, but fuck is a kind of an extra taboo on top of the meaning, because you could talk, there's less taboo words to talk about sexual intercourse. So fuck, it's both the word and the semantics add up to a double taboo. So we ran a study where we had a neutral word, a single taboo, which was the word sex, and double taboo fuck, and we looked at how how long people will hold their hands in the ice water under those conditions, and we are seeing that dose response effect. But we tried to go one step further. It's funny actually. I'll tell you what we did. This is all unpublished, by the way. This is what's on the desktop at the moment. So we tried to. So you get some words, you get a mild swear word that has a strong meaning, and vice versa. You get a word that's a strong swear. Well, this is what we said. Can we think of examples? And we did think of examples of this. So I don't know. I'll test you, maybe test your listeners. A swear word that's a strong word with a mild meaning.
Maybe bitch?
That's the one.
Because that's a strong... Is that the one, right? Like, it's a strong word, but it really doesn't mean that much.
Literally means a female dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is not in and of itself taboo. So we ran a study with 4 conditions: neutral word, fuck, and then in between we tried to manipulate. So the other word we chose, which is a word that's a mild word but a strong taboo meaning, was not... I wish we'd used crap now, I'll tell you, but we used the word bugger. Don't know how well that translates into the US, bugger, but, it's quite a mild word these days. Your granny would say bugger and no one would bat an eyelid because she couldn't find, something in the house.
Yeah.
But the meaning of the word bugger, but this is the funny thing. When we tested it out, what are the current sort of 18 to 20-year-olds? Gen Z, right? Gen Z.
Yeah, whatever the kids of today are.
Don't know what bugger means. The word has lost its meaning. It's been forgotten in popular culture. So in the end, that turned out to be a bad choice. So we need to rerun that study, unfortunately.
It didn't work out. Yeah, does booger over there? Like when I think of booger, it's just
no, it's different.
Your
So
nose.
that's a different word. This is Bugger.
that'd be like bugger here, which is anal sex.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what's the best cuss word?
If the theory is the more taboo, the stronger the effect, then go for the big taboo if you want a big effect. But you do have to think about the social situation when you deploy a swear word. So it's nuanced. I don't really have a I just use the same swear words as everybody else when I get frustrated or when I'm looking for a boost, when I'm riding my bike up a big hill. Fuck.